Dylan, hey Josh, great to have you both here with us today. It would be great if you could share just a little bit about how you met and how you got the idea for Spectacles.
Sure. So Dylan and I were both early Looker customers. I was working for a New York City bakery called Milk Bar. Dylan was an early customer in the UK and then eventually a Looker consulting partner. And Dylan was speaking on a panel at a Looker meetup in New York that I attended. And while he was speaking about his experiences, he was talking about a common frustration that Looker developers often encounter, which is that it can be difficult to test that the SQL that you write in your LookML will actually run in your data warehouse. And the effect of this is that sometimes, unless you test it and test it manually, there will be errors that surface in your dashboards and reports that your users don't understand. And so I remember him sitting up on stage and saying, I would pay someone to build a thing that would automatically test the SQL in my LookML. My customers would pay me or would pay someone to do it. And it got me thinking because I had been spending some time experimenting with the Looker API. And I approached Dylan after the meetup and I said, Dylan, Looker's conference is coming up in a few months. I think we should submit an abstract and a proposal for doing something like this. And we started working together. We were both in different cities, and our company has been remote for the past few years, but we put together a prototype, we submitted it to join, and we were accepted to speak. And so when we got to San Francisco to present at the conference, we were really excited, but also not sure how many people would want to attend a session about continuous integration and automated testing in Looker. But we were very pleasantly surprised to see that the room was standing room only. We had 4 rows of people in the back waiting to get in. It's been really exciting to see how the support of Looker and the support of the Looker community has helped make Spectacles what it is today.
That's so awesome. You're able to harness the flexibility of Looker's APIs to add so much additional value for customers.
Yeah, and I think what's great is it really did start. I mean, it's great that we're doing this for Join because we really, the only reason this started was really like we wanted to present it at Join. If you go back to the open source repository, you can see that I think commit 2 through 5 are us just working on our abstract submission for Join. So really, Josh and I have both benefited tremendously from the data community, Looker community broadly, and it's been really fun for this to have been built out from that.
That's awesome. In addition to that, what challenges or missed opportunities did you previously see with data, which led you to seek a new way of approaching the problem?
So I think Dylan and I are both inspired as data analysts to work as closely to the software engineering workflow and development lifecycle as possible. And so as people working on small data teams where we didn't always have a senior developer looking over our shoulder and checking our work, we really realized how important it is to use things like continuous integration and automated testing to make sure that the code that you're developing and eventually merge into production is clean and works the way that you expected it to. And so we saw a real opportunity within the Looker platform to build something that would fill that gap and would give developers peace of mind as they were writing LookML to be able to say, this code works, it's doing what I expect, and have the confidence to do their work well.
Thanks for sharing that. What type of customer would get the most value from this? I think, Dylan, this was something that you're really passionate about.
Yeah, so we've got customers really of all sizes using the platform. We've got everything from teams of 2 people who are time constrained and really want to make sure they're not making mistakes and use the platform to do that. And we've got really large companies, development teams of 30, 50 people, possibly across a bunch of instances. So the platform can work for everyone. That said, there are a couple sweet spots where we see a ton of adoption. So if you're an embedded use case, if you're using Looker to show, in the front end of your application, data to your customers, your risk there of your LookML being in any way wrong is much greater. And so in that instance, something like Spectacles that checks all your SQL, checks you're not breaking content, really is a no-brainer for organizations like that. The same can be said of organizations that have, as I said, 30, 50 developers, even kind of 15 plus. There's so many moving parts in a Looker instance with development teams of that size that it's hard to stay on top of all of that. The review process can become a bit slower. And so really, again, if you've got a really dynamic LookML code base with a ton of developers working on it, having that automated testing can give everyone the confidence to move quickly. And then finally, we've got a bunch of like hub and spoke teams using the tool. So if you have a central team and maybe you've got dependencies in between different LookML projects, and again, that's an instance where we work with a lot of companies where the review process gets slower because the dependencies across these things, it's sometimes hard to know exactly what the end behavior is going to be, even if you're making a small change. And so it's those larger, more complex instances and deployments where it's a real no-brainer, but we do see teams of all sizes using the tool.
And what kind of impact have you been seeing with the customers you worked with?
Yeah, so we work with a hub and spoke team where there's a central data team that supports the Looker platform for everyone in their organization, but where each sub-team has their own project. And their role is kind of it's almost a governance role. They're there to review the pull requests. They're there to make sure that nothing's breaking. And when they were reviewing, there's kind of two types of things they'd be checking. The first is, does this code run at all? And the second is, does the business logic match what we expect it to be? And with something like Spectacles, they brought their review times way down because that first category of things kind of goes away. You have confidence with Spectacles that everything's running, all the SQL's legitimate, there isn't a comma in the wrong place, whatever it might be. And so all they really have to review for is the business logic changes, which is a much more straightforward review process and has really allowed them to be a much more high leverage team supporting their organization.
And what's around the bend for Spectacles?
So we've had a ton of success providing this testing layer for LookML. But what's really cool about the Looker platform and Looker's API is there's actually a pretty broad range of things that we could build and that we now kind of plan to build. And so I think you can almost think of the platform as becoming DevOps for Looker of some sort. There are things like automatic code cleanup. So, not just telling you, hey, this explore and this join haven't been used in 90 days, but actually we've got an MVP that opens up a pull request for you and says, hey, we've seen that this code isn't being used. You're moving quickly. Understand that sometimes you're going to add stuff that doesn't get used over a period of time, becomes less in use. And instead of just pinging them and saying, hey, you need to go remove this thing, we can actually tell them, hey, we've done it. We've run our checks. We know that it doesn't break anything. Just merge this in and clean up your instance. There's been a ton of stuff around security permissions. As you talked about, as Looker becomes the core of analytics in other tools, there's more testing to be done, making sure that a LookML change isn't breaking some downstream experience in another BI tool. These large organizations are often have a multi-BI tool strategy these days. And just that as LookML becomes more used and the surface area becomes broader, we want to provide testing for all of that.
That makes a ton of sense. Now that you've been through all that, what advice would you give to someone who's thinking about doing a similar thing?
So if you're thinking about doing something like Spectacles, what I would say to you is you have a superpower in that as a Looker customer, you have a deep understanding of the pressing challenges facing people doing BI today. And the best part about the platform that Looker has built and the depth of API coverage and documentation and even the community supporting Looker is that there's a ton of possibilities to create whatever you need to solve the problems that you're having. That's exactly what Dylan and I did through Spectacles. And with Spectacles being open source, it's something that we've been even able to share back with the larger community to get contributions from other Looker customers and ultimately contribute to the best experience possible for Looker developers.
Great. Thanks, Dylan. Thanks, Josh, so much for your time and for sharing some of your experiences with us today.